Hey guys, I'm Mul today. In today's video, I'll be talking about the Saturday games for round 1 of Super Rugby Trans-Tasman. This means I'll talk about the Crusaders versus Brumbies, Rebels versus Blues, and Western Force versus Chiefs. So let's get cracking on. So with the Crusaders versus Brumbies match, it should be pretty interesting, obviously, with the Crusaders coming back from a recent title over that win over the Chiefs. And of course, the Brumbies are actually coming back from a loss within the grand final against the Reds. So yeah, both teams obviously will want to get a win within the opening round. Yeah, I can tell obviously from both sides. I mean, you can see the lineups here obviously for both teams. I mean, you can tell that both sides have kind of rested some players coming back from last week, because both sides obviously played a game last week, so you have to kind of rest some players, which is kind of understandable. But anyway, I'll go over the lineups now and just tell you what I think about them, and yeah, I'll give my predictions right afterwards. So with the Crusaders, they've gone with George Bauer as well as Michael Alatoa as their two props, which is two decent props, I'd say. And George Bauer has done pretty well in replacing Joe Moody at this point in time. So yeah, that's pretty good prop placements there. Then obviously for the Brumbies, you do have the likes of Scott Seal and obviously Alan Alatoa. So it'll be a clash of the brothers, you could say, within those two positions. Personally, I'm actually going to go with the Brumbies. It's just though, but that's only because I think Scott Seal has a lot more experience than George Bauer. If it was Joe Moody in there, I might have switched it around, but for that reason, I'm gonna go with Brumbies within the props. So obviously with the hooker position, it's gonna be probably the best battle, one of the key battles from the game for sure, with Cody Taylor obviously being the captain for the Crusaders, and then you also have the likes of Flav Ango, who's been brilliant for the Brumbies throughout the last few years, and yeah, he's just a try scoring machine really. But obviously Cody Taylor has really stepped up his game, I'd say, within this within the Ultra within this year's Ultra competition. So for that reason, I'm actually going to give it to Cody Taylor. So yeah, Cody Taylor definitely wins that battle up in the hooker position. So moving on to the locks, with the locks obviously for the Crusaders, you do have the likes of Mitchell Dunshea as well as Samuel Whitelock, so pretty good combo there. Have a lot of Super Rugby experience within that position, but they will be facing the likes of Darcy Swine as well as Nick Frost. So personally, I think this is an easy win for the Crusaders. I just think those two players have a lot more experience than Super Rugby. So anyway, moving on to the loose forwards. The loose forwards is a very interesting one, obviously, with both sides. Both have pretty good caliber players in that position. With the Crusaders having the likes of Ethan Blackletter as well as Tom Sanders, and then of course Cullen Gray. So a pretty good trio there within loose forwards, and should do pretty well within the breakdown. To be honest, I mean, even like with the Brumbies, they have the Brumbies have the likes of Henry Stowers, who's obviously come from the Western Force. So it'll be good to see how he plays for them. Obviously, he was signed as an injury cover for the final, but now he'll be playing his first game for the Brumbies, so it should be interesting to see how he does. At 7, they have the likes of Rory Scott, and then of course at number 8 they have Rob Valentini. So yeah, I mean, I like that Brumbies trio, but to be frank, I'm gonna give it to the Crusaders again, because I just like the trio more, I think, and it's more balanced, I'd say, throughout the Crusaders loose forward pack. So moving on to the back. So obviously for that 9-10 combination for the Crusaders, you do have the likes of Bryn Hall and Richard Mo'unga, so it's pretty good combo there. Bryn Hall obviously has been, you could say, been battling out with Mitch Drummond throughout this whole, within that team for the whole time really. So it's good to see him get a start for once. But yeah, for the Brumbies on the other hand, they do have the likes of Ryan Lonergan, who have actually gone with at number 9, as well as Noah Laseo, who's just been brilliant for the Brumbies within this whole competition within Super Rugby AU. So it's one of those where Richard Mo'unga hasn't really, I wouldn't say had a standout season within the Ultra competition, but I think just because the combination is slightly better in my opinion, so I'm going to go with the Crusaders within that one. So we're moving on to the centres. So the centres is a very interesting one. Obviously, obviously with the likes of David Havili, and then you have the well, I'm not going to say the introduction, but you have the return of Brenna Enor within the starting lineup for the Crusaders. So that's a pretty good combo there. I really like that a lot. So we'll see how that goes. But more or less, you do have the likes of Israel Simone as well as Ikatal for the Brumbies, and both of them have done very well within Super Rugby AU. And I've been very impressed by Simone for this, since he's joined the Brumbies. I mean, even last year he was brilliant for them, and he's really continued his form within the Brumbies camp. So that actually could be a draw, but because David Havili has just been so, I mean, in my opinion, he was my MVP for Super Rugby Ultra. So for that reason, I'm gonna give it to Crusaders within that position. So we moved on to the wingers. The wingers is a very interesting one, obviously, with the likes of Lester Fanianku shifting back into the winger spot, which is good to see. And obviously you have the likes of Metale at the 14 position, so it'll be good to see how he does because we haven't seen him start within a long time. Then obviously with the Brumbies, however, you do have the likes of Tom Wright at the 11th spot, so he gives you a lot of consistency. Gives you at least a 7 out of 10 performance at least every week. And then of course you have the likes of Simone Kata at that 14 position, and to be frank, I actually like that combo a lot better within the wingers spot. So for that reason, I'm actually giving it to the Brumbies within the wingers. So yeah, the last position, obviously, you do have the likes of George Bridge against Tom Banks. This is an interesting one, obviously, with the likes of Will Jordan being rested for this game, which is good to see because he needs some kind of rest because he's been starting this whole time and he needs some kind of rest. But yeah, George Bridge, obviously, he's filled in that position beforehand, and don't get me wrong, he's a good player as well. He's similar to like Tom Wright in the sense where he always gives you that consistency. But I think I'm going to edge it towards Tom Banks within that position because I just think he's Australia's best 15 at this point in time, and yeah, I think he's been solid for the Brumbies throughout the whole season for Super BAU. So hopefully he can bring that into this competition. So anyway, that's kind of it with that, with both those lineups for that game. If I had to predict who would actually win that game, I think I'm going to have to edge it towards the Crusaders just because they're playing at home within Christchurch. And yeah, for that reason, I'm going to say they'll win this game by, I think it'll be close than what people will expect, but I think they'll only win this game by at least 7 points. So I'll say they'll win this game by 7 points, and I'll say the score will be, I'll say 25-18. Yeah, 25-18 to the Crusaders is my final prediction for that game. So anyway, moving on to the Rebels versus Blues. So obviously, here are the lineups, obviously, for both sides. I run them by with you guys, tell you what I think about them, and I'll give my prediction right afterwards. So with the Rebels, obviously, they have, they didn't have their best season, I'd say. They finished 4th in the competition, as well as the Blues, they finished 3rd. So they're kind of in the similar position, but more or less with their lineups, they haven't, they've both had time to rest, so they've kind of gone with their best lineups, I'd say. With the Rebels, obviously, they have the likes of Cameron Orr as well as Eltov as within those propping positions. So 2 decent props there, give you a lot of Super Rugby experience, I'd say. But they will be facing the likes of Carlton Wafe as well as Renata. And normally I would actually give it to the Blues within that position, but because they actually haven't, Renata, for me, he doesn't have enough Super Rugby experience, and if they went with someone like Nipolalala in that position, I would have given it to them. So for that reason, I'm going to give it to the Rebels in that position. So then moving on to the Hookers. So the Hookers is a very interesting spot because with the Rebels, you do have the likes of UAC, who's been very good, and obviously he's a Wallaby caliber hooker. But you do have the likes of Kurt Eklund, who's done very well for the Blues and probably was their top try scorer within Super Rugby Aotearoa. So for that reason, I'm actually going to say that's a draw. So I'm going to say that's a draw within the hooking spot. But yeah, moving on to the locks. With the locks for both sides, you do have the likes of Lotea as well as Helepeli for the Rebels. So I wouldn't say they have a lot of Super Rugby experience, but they've done, I'd say, pretty well within Super BAU for them too. But then you do have the likes of Gerald Tuwari as well as Josh Goodhue. So for that reason, I think I'm going to edge towards the Blues in that selection because I just think Josh Goodhue and Kwali Tuwari just bring you a lot more experience in that position as well as experience in Super Rugby level. So moving on to the loose forwards. So the loose forwards is a very interesting selection because I think both sides have good loose forwards within there. With the Rebels, you do get the likes of, with Josh Kamiri as well as Richard Hardwick, and then you also have the likes of Michael Wells. So it's pretty good, I'd say, trio there within that, and it can definitely do a bit of damage within the breakdown. But I think I'm gonna have to give it to the Blues again because the Blues have the likes of Tom Robinson, who's obviously the captain of the side for the Blues, and then you have the likes of Adrian Cho and then Hoskins Satutu. So I think I'm gonna have to give it to the Blues just because I think Tom Robinson and Satutu just really bring that home, and hopefully they should be hopefully should do pretty well in actually getting the ball back for the Blues. But anyway, moving on to the 9-10 combo and the backs for both sides. For the 9-10 combo for the Rebels, you do have the likes of Joe Powell as well as Matt Tamua, and obviously Matt Tamua is the captain for the Rebels, so that's a pretty good combo to be fair. For the Blues, you do have the likes of Finley Christie as well as Ontario Black. So this is actually an interesting one. I'm actually going to say it's a draw again. So because I think Joe Powell and Finley Christie are similar in the sense where they have a lot of Super Rugby experience, but I think Matt Tamua and Ontario Black are very similar at the level they are at the moment. So for that reason, I'm actually going to say that's a draw again for those positions. So anyway, moving on to the centers, obviously for both sides, with the likes of for the Rebels, you do have the likes of Campbell McNay as well as Stacey Lee for that two positions. So pretty good centers there. I wouldn't say they have a lot of Super Rugby experience, but still decent centers to have and pretty good combo there. But for the Blues, I think I'm going to have to edge it towards them again. They do have the likes of TJ Fani as well as Rico Larini. So, yeah, I mean, those two are just dangerous and have so much chemistry together. So, yeah, I'm going to have to edge it towards the Blues from that selection. So now moving on to the wingers. So the wingers is a very interesting one, obviously, one with both sides. You have the likes of Core Betty, obviously, for that 11 spot within the Rebels. And then you have the likes of Frank Lamani, who's actually fitting within that 14 spot, which he has done before. But I mean, he's normally a scrum half, but he has played there before, so it'll be interesting to see how he does there. But obviously for the Blues, you do have the likes of, you could say, a younger winger spot, younger backline with that AJ Lamb filling in at 11, obviously with Caleb Clark going to the Olympics with the All Blacks, and then obviously Brees Haim at 14. So for that reason, I think I'm going to edge it towards the Rebels within that position, just because I think they have a lot more experience, and Core Betty is literally just a battering ram, so he'll definitely do some damage towards the Blues back line. But yeah, with that 15 spot, obviously, is the last one. You do have the likes of Tom Pincus, as well as going against Zoran Sullivan. Normally, Zoran Sullivan, he just doesn't have enough experience, to be frank. I mean, obviously, he did very well within his opening game, getting a try and a try assist for the Blues. But I think I have to give it to Tom Pincus, only because he's a lot more experienced, and I think he can do a lot, I'm not going to say a lot more damage, but I think he can find gaps better within the defense than what Zoran Sullivan can do. But I hope he proves me wrong. I hope he does prove me wrong. But anyway, that's kind of it with both those lineups. If I had to predict who would actually win that game, I think the Blues might just nick it. So for that reason, I'm going to say the Blues will win this game by at least 3 points, by only 3 points. And I'll say they'll win this game 25 points to 22. Yeah, 25 points to 22 is my final prediction for this game. So anyway, moving on to the last game, obviously, and that's between the Western Force and the Chiefs. Obviously, this should be a very interesting game, obviously, with both sides wanting to win this game for sure. The game's been playing within Perth, so Western Force will have home advantage. Yeah, more or less, here are the sides, obviously, for both sides. I'll run them by with you guys, tell you what I think about them, and yeah, I'll give my prediction afterwards. So with the Western Force, you do have the likes of Todd Robinson, as well as Santiago Moreno, so pretty good prop duo there, and I really enjoyed watching them within Super BAU. But however, you do have for the Chiefs Aiden Ross and Angus Talval. So it's one of those where I think that was arguably the best prop duo within Super Rugby Aotearoa. So for that reason, I'm actually going to edge it towards them. But that'll be probably one of the key battles from the game for sure. So then moving on to the hooker spot, for the Western Force, you do have the likes of Kateo, but he'll be facing the likes of Nathan Harris for the Chiefs. So they've actually rested Takaleho for the Chiefs, which is good to see because obviously he needs a bit of rest. Obviously playing last week, but yeah, no, I think I'm gonna edge it towards. I think that's a draw. I'm gonna say that's a draw because I just don't think both of them have enough Super Rugby experience to actually qualify for edging it over each other, and I think they're kind of the same caliber hooker and I'd say a line-out accuracy as well. So moving on to the locking positions, with the Western Force, you do have the likes of Jamie Fresh as well as Fergus Lee Waters, so I'd say that's a pretty good duo in my opinion. Has a lot, Super Rugby experience there with Jeremy Fresh, and then Fergus Lee Warner, you could say an upcoming lock / loose forward, so it's good. This pretty good combo there. But they will be facing the likes of Josh Lord and Tupou Valley. So for that reason, I mean, Tupou Valley is pretty good, and obviously he's an up-and-coming lock for the All Blacks. But because they don't have Al Kui there, I think I'm going to go with the Western Force within that position. So anyway, moving on to the loose forwards. So for the loose forwards, you do have the likes of Tim Ansey, as well as Kane Katoa, as well as Breen Stander for the Western Force. So I'd say, I'm not going to say the best loose forward trio there, but pretty good in the sense where Breen Stander's done pretty well, I'd say, for the Western Force. But I think I'm going to have to edge it towards the Chiefs within this one. I think that's probably the easiest selection I'd say I can have out of all the teams I've gone through. They have the likes of Peter Gus Sumakula at 6, then they have Lachlan Boucher at 7, and then Luke Jacobson at 8. So yeah, straight away I'm gonna go for that. I think they'll be all three of them will be, good within that breakdown, and will definitely win a lot more balls for the Chiefs. And yeah, I think for that reason I'm gonna say the Chiefs win that battle. So moving on to the backs, and obviously starting off with that 9-10 combo. For the Western Force, obviously, you do have the likes of Thomas Gubelli, who's done pretty well, I'd say, within his opening season for the Western Force, and obviously Jake McIntyre. But I think I'm going to have to edge towards the Chiefs. That Brad Weber Damien McKenzie combination, I think it's gonna do too much damage. And obviously Brad Weber is the captain for the Western Force, so yeah, I think that combination is just a lot better. And yeah, Damien McKenzie, you could definitely argue he was the MVP of Super Rugby Ultra Rare. So yeah, that they definitely edge up. Definitely edge that selection for me for sure. So moving on to the centers for both sides, for the Western Force, you do have the likes of Henry Tapio, as well as Kyle Goodwin. So a pretty good combo there, and I think they have played a number of times together, so they have somewhat a bit of chemistry there. So it'll be good to see how that goes. But I think I'm gonna have to edge towards the Chiefs again, with Alex Nagavel as well as Antonella Brown. I think that combo is just really beginning to form into a really good duo, and the chemistry there is really building into a good relationship. So for that reason, I'm gonna edge it towards the Chiefs within that selection. So anyway, moving on to the wingers. So the wingers is a very interesting one, obviously, because both sides, I wouldn't say have the best winger selections. With the likes of with the Western Force, they do have the likes of Ofalea, who's done very well. In to be fair, he obviously scored that hat trick against the Reds. So and obviously he's come from the Leicester Tigers, I believe. So he's on loan there. So he's done very well, I'd say, so far with the Western Force. And his partner in crime will actually be Richard Krahui. So it's interesting to see he's been selected within that winger selection, because normally he's been within the center. So we'll see how he does, and obviously he is playing against his former team, so it'll be an interesting reunion to see how he does. But for the wingers for the Chiefs, however, they do have the likes of John Aloa at the 11 spot, so he's actually switched winger spots than normally, and obviously Sean Stevenson is fit within that 14 spot. So I'm actually going to say that's a draw, because I think both sides have a mix of different qualities and what they can bring. But within that last position, obviously, within that 15 spot, you do have the likes of Rob Kearney facing off against Chase Tiatia. And Rob Kearney, I think, just brings a lot more experience in that position compared to Chase Tiatia. But Chase Tiatia has done very well for the Chiefs. So, again, I'm actually going to say that's a draw. And, yeah, that battle can go either way, in my opinion. So, anyway, that's kind of it with the lineups for that game and for all the lineups. So, if I had to say who would actually win that game, I'm going to probably edge it towards the Chiefs, but I think there's going to be a close battle again, and also they'll only win this by at least, I'll say, 5 points. So I think they'll win this game by, I'll say, 27 points to 22. Yeah, 27 points to 22 is my final prediction for that game. So anyway, that's kind of it with the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Definitely comment below to let me know who you guys think will win. But other than that, just hope you guys have a good day, and talk to you guys soon.